Hello and welcome to All Killer No Filler. It is Friday. I'm Eric Dick here with co-host Kyle Guilfoyle. And you may notice we are a few members short today. Normally, we use Fridays, All Killer No Filler, as an opportunity to round back with the Pilothouse team and talk about what's working. But as you might imagine, on Friday, Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, the team is just slammed and probably just hitting refresh a lot at this point. I would say, just as a quick update, things are going extremely well this Black Friday, Cyber Monday. The team has been incredibly well prepared. And next week, we're going to give a bit more of a breakdown of the things that really worked with the team. We'll be back with them. But today, Kyle and I thought, why don't we just get together and talk a little bit about D2C and talk about this business that we're building and what's really worked well for that. So we usually start with a value rocket, and we're going to get into a bit more of a chronological story. But do you have a value? Just to put you on the spot, KG, I know you're constantly filled with value rockets. Do you have one right off the top for this one?
Let me see here. Well, so really, we're building a content business, and I think the biggest aha for me that comes at the top of my mind is, a lot of people I think are afraid of content because of how much work it is. And I think that what we're starting to get close to is a real content machine where it's not so painful to create the content. I think early on when it was just you and I, like those Mondays and Tuesdays before we were sending out the newsletter, they were a grind. We were just like, tethered to the keyboard.
Call those
and now we're at a
states, Monday, Tuesday, fugue states, where you literally just go unconscious and just start typing the newsletter.
Totally. And I think what's so cool about how we've developed is when you develop content, you really tune into your unique abilities, I think. And, for you, you're an amazing speaker, right? And I sort of feed off that as well. And, so we're really focusing on the podcast, and we have other people to support us in mining the value rockets and the content out of that content. And then we're just kind of creating a virtuous cycle. So I think that, and I think that a newsletter is a really great way to do that. So awesome. I would say that that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. How about you? What would you say?
Well, that's good. Let's just use that as a starting off point to talk a little bit about like how and why. I think that's really what we want this podcast to be. We'll keep it short, but we just want to talk a little bit about how we've gone about building what we've built. So to give you an idea of what we've built, D2C is a newsletter. It's still part of Pilothouse, which is the agency, and we're going to talk a little bit about how that all came about. But what's really cool is it's going to become its own thing. It's very close to becoming its own thing. And our big brag thing that we'll talk, we're not going to get in depth on how much money we're making and all that. But the crazy thing is we're close to break even, 4-5 months in now. Which is pretty crazy. If we stopped spending money to acquire new users to keep growing the list, we'd actually be sort of profitable kind of going forward right now if we could continue to bring on advertisers. So that's our big flex right now is 4 months into this thing, and we built what we think is going to be a really sustainable high growth business that has also benefited Pilothouse a massive amount. So to me, that's the big thing that we're talking about. And so if we back up a little bit and talk about how this came to be, I talk about this all the time. Kyle hears me talk about it when we're doing interviews or things like that. But really, how this happened was, I started another business called iStack Training in 2017. It became a really great source for entrepreneurs, grassroots entrepreneurs who wanted to build businesses, to learn about ad techniques, to learn about CRO and marketing things. I brought together, this great selection of external people to teach at these events that I was putting on to build these courses. And what it did is it really built this incredible grassroots network of entrepreneurs. And it gave me the taste for what it's like to be around these people, what it's like to build a community in and among these people. Ultimately, that business didn't work. I was traveling. I was just thinking about today how different my life is now, being stuck at home here for the past 9 months in a way. When the previous 2 years, I was literally traveling, Barcelona, Bangkok, Berlin, Las Vegas, San Diego, putting on these events, and it was amazing. I was meeting all these people. It was so fun, but it really kind of wore me out. I've got a young child, a family here, so all that travel wasn't a great fit. But what was really crazy about iStack is I actually built that business while renting office space from Pilothouse. Now, you probably heard me say this before. But that was what was so cool. That agency was 5 employees at the time, maybe even less, maybe 2. They just started doubling, bringing on bigger and bigger clients, and they saw what I was building, and they recognized there was value in that. But when that ended up closing shop, there ended up being an opportunity to jump in with Pilothouse. We had these conversations where they're like, we're not going to give you equity in the agency because you haven't been a part of that. But what we're down to discuss is how we can build something together on top of it that can create equity for you. So basically, I jumped on board with Pilothouse. We were going to create courses. We were going to create right off the bat. We were going to create these big courses on how to do all the media buying that we do. But this was right when Corona started, and so we sort of took a step back and realized, okay, let's stick with what I know, which is like, let's start doing interviews. Let's start doing podcasts. The podcast was born. And then very quickly, we started to see that even though it wasn't generating a lot of, a huge amount of growth, for the podcast, it was bringing on the right ears, the right eyeballs of clients that wanted to work with Pilothouse. So we knew that we had something there. We knew that what was really cool is we could start building a business inside of Pilothouse and provide enough value for Pilothouse that it still made sense to help grow us. And around that time, once we realized we had something on board, we're like, okay, how do we take this content that we're producing and really, as Kyle said earlier, like, how do we turn it into a virtuous cycle? And Jeff, who wasn't able to join us today, basically said, well, let's start building a newsletter. Let's start taking the content that we know lives in these podcasts that people really like when they listen to it. But there's something about an hour-long podcast that intimidates people, I think, sometimes. And so being able to have all the valuable points laid out in a newsletter became an obvious thing to do. That's when we brought KG on. And it was funny. I actually I brought him on early, just because I knew him and knew he'd be a great asset to the company. We brought him on as a media buyer on the Pilothouse side at first. But then it quickly became apparent that he had a very unique skill set for what we were trying to build on the content side, and we stole him back. What was it like for you entering the company as a media buyer? Was that like I imagine it's been a good part of your experience.
Yeah, it was awesome because before that, I my experience buying ads was for my own business, and I had varying degrees of success with it. I actually attribute like most of our customers to running ads, but then coming into an agency and seeing it at like full throttle was pretty eye opening, and to just be totally immersed in it in a while and see how it's done at a high level was super valuable. And I think we that's part of now it's part of how we develop content, right? Like we see what they're doing inside, and I think that's early on, that's what we were talking about. That's what people want. They want to look under the hood and see how it's done at a really, really hyper speed kind of level. And so that's why this makes a lot of sense, I think.
And I think just in terms of just making, being a reporter, which is what you kind of in the early days, you were sort of like trying to skim all the content that you could from that. I think starting as a media buyer just gave you the personal relationships and just a bit more of the bearings on how things are done to be able to pull out that information more seamlessly, which is kind of what we did. So we basically, we have this newsletter. I basically, recapitulated my audience from iStack training, which was this big audience of sort of hustlers and people that have built these amazing businesses and affiliates and entrepreneurs and all these things. But what was really crazy about what we realized we were onto very early on is we basically just made some ads. We made one ad. We started with one ad. We got our designer, Robin, who built us our amazing brand. He actually built our logo live, like while we were on a call with him in about 10 minutes, like he does with all of his best designs. And he created some treatments for the logo that just had the logo in bright colors and different settings that wasn't related to e-commerce at all. It was just bright, eye-catching things. We wrote one ad where it was a slideshow on Instagram where we're putting different reasons you want to sign up for us on each of those slides. We threw it up there and we started getting leads for very, very cheap. We started getting people who were interested. And I thought, okay, I've run enough lead generation on Facebook to know, okay, we got to check this quality. We got to make sure that we're getting high quality people onto the list. And what we realized very clearly is that by naming something D2C at the beginning of these COVID times, where not only everyone from the grassroots wanted to talk about D2C, but everyone from Unilever, everyone from Bausch and Lomb, everyone from Revlon, all these huge companies that we saw were signing up to our newsletter, they knew that they had to accelerate their D2C plans, 10 years. And so we realized early on, okay, we're onto something here. We're generating, not only are these marketers and startups, but these are also the huge corporations that are also turning to us for these direct marketing tips that we were able to find. So we were like, okay, we got something here. So then we started buying leads, and really a huge percentage of our growth, we put in a lot of the organic stuff that's necessary, the referral programs, we've been flexing our own personal networks, all those things, but really our growth has come from ad buying, which has been a really cool thing. And we started, Kyle was managing it to start, and we kind of have since moved on to Pilothouse is actually helping manage the ads at this point. Any insights on the ad side of things?
Well, I'd actually like to kind of take a step back, because I think that I do think that one of the biggest wins of this newsletter is the quality of the audience, like you were alluding to. And I'm curious what your perspective is on why that is. Like it's just, every person we've jumped on a call with for our DTC Plus home run chats, the responses to our emails we get, the high frequency caliber of brands that are on our list, like it's all really high. And I just wonder, from your perspective, why do you think that is?
It's a good, first of all, like I'll one step back further to ISAC training, and I knew I wanted to be in this space because being around people that were on this high frequency, to me there's something really special about people who are not taking life the way it is served to them, in a lot of ways. I think the way life is served to you, it's like, you get a job, maybe you get a job in the government, or you work at a corporation or whatever. Like the way life is served to you, I think we're seeing increasingly doesn't work for people as well. So those that are able to take that situation and then take it into their own hands and actually become an entrepreneur and actually create value for other people through their customers, being around these people became intoxicating. And so to start with, like, that's why I knew I really wanted to kind of stay in this space, and that's why I can't wait for a point where we can get together in the same places, because I know what kind of magic happens there. I was just talking with someone about backstage at these events I used to run, like the deals that I would see being put in place. And then, it was pretty mind-blowing stuff. And so in terms of our list, it's hard to say. I just think there are so many high quality brands out there. I think the barriers to entry for this kind of thing are so much lower than they've been, that I think we just hit the right people. I think Facebook is the biggest reason. Facebook and Instagram are the biggest reason, because we had really good targeting parameters. We were able to really just zone in. We did a lot of audience testing. We did a lot of lookalike creation in the beginning. We tested a ton of different interests, and I think we were able to like really just profile our audience member really well, until we could allow the better signals like clicks on our emails, and purchases of our courses and things like that. Those are really helping drive the audience forward. But to me, it's just Facebook, like that's really where the power came from. It's funny, like I look back on things like, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but like Cambridge Analytica, this whole Cambridge Analytica thing going, where people were talking about this nefarious guy, Alexander Nix, who I interviewed on stage one time in Bangkok, actually. Alexander Nix was running this company called Cambridge Analytica, and they had got all this data from all these nefarious means, and they were using that data to change elections around the world. They were using that data to persuade people to vote for Trump, or to persuade people to Brexit, or things like that. But just recently, just in the past 3 months, a big news story came out that said, hey, we looked at Cambridge Analytica, we looked at Alexander Nix, and really that whole situation was like a red herring. Like all of the nefarious things that he was bringing to the table were actually just good audience targeting that Facebook provides. So the real moral of that story for me is just like, don't underestimate how powerful Facebook is when it comes to finding your right audience, whether you're doing B2B or B2C or whatever, or trying to change elections in the third world or whatever. Facebook is pretty all powerful.
Totally. And we saw pretty good. I don't want that, like, I'm trying to find what's valuable here. We actually saw pretty good results pretty early on. And I think that we started seeing challenges in our ads when we couldn't focus on them as much, because the demands of the content were just so great. But so you asked me a little while ago, like if I had any ad insights, and I mean, I think, I don't know, it's nothing too crazy or outside of the box, but we tested a lot of audiences. We had some great customer data already. And I think it's just strong copy. I'm a copywriter at heart. So I think that you and I and of course the Pilothouse team just wrote some really strong copy that a lot of it was quite personal too. It's just to the to the point
We used the things
and
in the podcast as well. We used "it's true," all these things that we actually
Mhm.
talked about. That's the this to me is the underlying point of everything that we're doing here in a lot of ways, and what I did at ISAC training as well is this opportunity to connect with all these people in this ongoing way is just such an incredible learning experience. We're becoming better marketers all the time by the conversations we're having, and the customers that we're bringing on. All of these things. The one thing that's really crazy about our ads that I'll say is it really is like a couple ads that have done all of this. And when we find things that work, we're doubling down on them and trying to find other angles in. We're trying creatives around there. Our holy grail creative, for instance. If you're in a market, like try that word holy grail. That's one that's worked really well as well, beyond some of the striking visual things that we brought to the table. But yeah, I think the other thing would be about the landing page. Like we just created a really dead simple landing page. Again, we haven't changed that once yet. There's still probably tweaks that we could make there to improve that. But I think just creating a really dead simple landing page was a big part of that as well.
Eric, I'm curious, would you agree that generally speaking, things have worked the best for us the more simple we keep them and the less we use like gee whiz tactics? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I think this will be an ongoing thing that we're finding. Yeah, we're like, and I think the more that we're transparent, it's so funny. It's we were talking about what we're going to be talking about on this podcast, what we're able to share. To me, yeah, the times where we're transparent, the times where that we in our first course we let people on the course 15 minutes early while we just bullshitted about whatever we were talking about, trying to figure out the presentation, and we realized people were on there with us and they loved it. They both became customers. Just because they love that sort of inside access to what people are building. So I go back to what we learned from Midday Squares about building in public and how important that is. And I think it's something we need to continue to improve on. Like we're still not building in public as much as we could be. And I think there's probably more value to be honed there.
I totally agree. I think, you know, there's just so many people in the space who it's just like, it's either me too marketing or it's like, hey, look at me marketing. And I think that the more we can just, you know, yes, like you said, be transparent and a little and vulnerable, I guess, and just kind of show it how it is. Like a lot of this stuff, and especially as we build in public, we're seeing it with the membership site. It's not perfect right off the bat, and but but we're gonna put it out there because the best feedback we can get isn't from us. It's not from our heads. It's from our subscribers and our fans and our members. So
And
so
speaking
yeah.
about our velocity too, right? Like I think that's the other big thing that we've done. I think it would have been easy. Like literally we had 20 listens, to our first couple podcasts, or 10 listens, or a dozen, or if we were just looking at those vanity metrics, like it would have been easy to get discouraged in those easy days. But we sort of knew, hey, right away from those first 20 listens, we got a potential client or something like that. So we did have those other signals that were really important. But the thing is, we've just been literally relentless. Like I've had some friends of mine who are in this similar space. They run agencies and they're building their content games as well, and it's hard work. Like, and this is something I really give Pilothouse credit for doing, is really investing in this. Like, really investing in this team, investing in me, allowing me to build out this team with great people. And if you're just gonna pick away at it, if you're gonna do a podcast every now and then, or you're gonna put something out there, it's not gonna work as well as if you're able to be, especially if you're able to hire someone, bring someone in whose dedicated job it is to start having these conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, it's really, I think it was Roger Figueredo, who we've had on the podcast. Figueredo. He recently put a tweet out there, which we shared, that marketing is really, it's about sustained pressure over time. It's not, it's not about these blitzkrieg, campaigns. It's about really just, being that woodpecker who just pecks and pecks and pecks in the same spot. And I think this is like a Seth Godin quote, where you can either be the woodpecker who pecks in one spot and gets dinner, or you can peck all over the place and get absolutely nothing. And I think that's really, that's what we're doing. It's that sustained pressure, one simple weekly newsletter that's really good, and a podcast on an ongoing basis. And, the rest kind of falls from those branches.
I like it. And I think our dynamic where, you're pushing us forward in different ways, but also helping us keep it simple in some ways. My connections, we don't need to go into too much of a love fest here, but it's been really great working with you, I got to say.
Likewise.
And I think back as a, something else to bring up, like with Pilothouse, one of the things that Pilothouse does really well with clients is build out content. We build out content front ends to engage people that end up, filtering them into purchases essentially. And so when we started to make, this content brand for Pilothouse, we didn't even realize we were doing it, honestly. We just wanted to start having great conversations, but we realized, as the pipeline filled up on the Pilothouse side, and as we've found our own feet on this side as well, like, it's, we've really built a third party brand for Pilothouse in a lot of ways. And so it's like, if you're out there and if you've got a brand, if you've got an agency, and we know it's pretty much brand and agency owners, like that idea of creating a content brand that runs parallel to what you're doing, is amazing. Like, even with D2C, we're always talking about, like, can we talk to other agency owners? And we really can. Like, we can have anyone in our ecosystem, because ultimately, the idea is, the way I've always put it is, like, Pilothouse is throwing a party, D2C is that party, and we invite everyone to our parties. We want everyone to come have fun at our parties, but we just know that there's going to be a lot of people that want to know who the host is. Like, they may love all the fancy guests that they get to meet or whatever, but ultimately they're going to want to know who the host is. And that way we don't have to be too overt with what we're doing. We just have to keep putting out high quality stuff, bring high quality conversations to the table, and not even focus on that. And then, and it'll just happen, because we're not being salesy. We're not putting it front and center. So that's what I'd recommend to people.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, and yeah, it really is that a kind of a three-legged stool. It's a business development pipeline. It's a product in and of itself that you can monetize, and we get to connect with wonderful people. Now, I think to wrap up, I mean, we could probably go on forever, but it's been a lot of like how it's great and this and that. I think it'd be really good to, before we sign off, like what's been the biggest challenge? I'm curious what the biggest challenge has been from your standpoint.
The biggest challenge is just like the biggest challenge is just that it's always an ongoing challenge. It's like every single day we're getting together and being like, we'll take a break in the evening. Usually we'll do a little work in the evening as well, but we meet every day at 9:30 and we're like, what's the challenge today? And it's sort of like making sure that we're focused on the right things, making sure that we are taking that time all the time to do and I think we have to do it more. Like I think this week we only did 1 or 2 2-hour powwows, like, and we need to be doing that more, because the challenge is just, we were saying this earlier in our meeting, it's just that it is the content grind in a lot of ways, and we're getting better and better at it, at elevating from it and creating systems that make it easier. But it's that week in, week out notion that's like, we know we have 15,000 people waiting for a high quality piece of content every week, and then that's on us to sign off on, either create or sign off on every single week. So that's a pretty big challenge. What about you?
I totally agree with that. It's striking that balance between sustained pressure on ourselves and being on that proverbial content hamster wheel, and building a flywheel system that can at some point work without us constantly putting that pressure on ourselves. And so but I think that, like, it's par for the course in the early days. Is that's what you got to do. You got to put in that that elbow grease right now. And as we go, we're establishing the voice and tone of our newsletter. We're establishing some systems as we go along. We're going to build standard operating procedures, and really it's about it's about building that content machine, so that someday, we should maybe figure out when that day is, we're not it's not so much, because I'm not gonna lie, yeah, sometimes I am it's really hard. It's really hard. Just to always have that, like, that pressure. So yeah, that's it's definitely a challenge, but I mean, it does get easier.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, and it's very cool to be able to see it getting easier, as we've just brought on Sadie. I think maybe the next team podcast we'll bring Sadie on. She's she just started this week, but she's been writing for us for a while now, and we've got some other interesting irons in the fire in that regard.
Mhm.
If you're listening to this podcast and you're a writer and you want to be involved in what we're doing, send us a note. Send us a note at Kyle
Yes.
at directtoconsumer.co, Eric at directtoconsumer.co. We'd love to hear from you because we know
Yes.
that there are so many creative people out there. I love that, if you're an ad buyer, you probably have a pretty full stack set of skills when it comes to writing and communicating specifically. So we're always interested in hearing from people that want to be a part of what we're doing, want to join this conversation. You can join us, as a freelance writer. We're also potentially looking at hiring writers. And then beyond that, like one of the things that, we this week we did a bunch of interviews for D2C Plus. If you are interested in D2C Plus, go to d2cplus.co right now. And if you want to, you'll sign up for a call in that onboarding flow where we really discuss, what you want out of your ultimate D2C community. What are the ways we can make this? It's called a home run chat. We say, what are ways we can make this a home run for you? And I love them because we're just learning so much about the people in our community. And it's really dawning on me, this idea of virtuous cycles where we're trying to build a community where we don't have to create all the content. We want to bring people together where we know that they're going to want to share and what they share is going to provide value for everyone else. So that's the big goal with D2C Plus, I think, is to create this incredible sort of inertia where we're able to bring together these really high-end, high-intent individuals who are all working on similar things, and then watch that community really flourish with each other. And so we're constantly trying to find ways to make that go.
Totally.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, I think that does us for our half an hour all killer no filler chat today. As always, reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want to come on the podcast, if you want to join D2C Plus, if you want to advertise on our newsletter, which we right now have one spot. We think that might be gone soon for the next 2 months, but we'd love to have you on or to discuss that. And again, Kyle, thanks for all your hard work. Thanks for everything. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a real privilege.
The other bit of inside information you can get about Kyle and I is usually, we didn't do it this week, but at least once a week, we are going into the ocean in the middle of winter just to prove that we can do something hard.
In Canada.
In Canada, even. This is not California we're talking about. We're in Canada. So next time, maybe next time we'll tell you when our cold dip is and we can do like a giant global cold dip. If you're in a cold place as well, you can also go do a cold dip, but it's great for the Constitution.
I agree. We could live stream it.
Oh, that's a good idea. We'll build in the open in our bathing suits once I get a little fitter. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the All Killer No Filler podcast. We'll be back next week with a full recap of Black Friday, Cyber Monday with some of the heavy hitters from Pilothouse. Cheers.
Peace. Peace.